Well, it's good to have you here this morning. You will need message notes if you don't have those. If you don't have those, raise your hand. Again, a volunteer will bring you that, and you'll need something to write with. I don't want you to have to prick your finger and write with blood or anything like that. So we do have ink pen to save you from that part there. So here's my question today to you. How big is your perception of God? How big is God to you? Now, you might say, well, he's as big as the universe, or he's all powerful, he's all knowledgeable. You might even think of him as the Wizard of Oz. I'm not sure how you think of him, or you may think of him as Santa Claus. I'm not sure how you think of him or her. How you think of him or her. But my question is, how big is your God? Because the next thing I want to say to you is, how big God is determines how you pray to your God. How big your God is determines how you pray to your God. In fact, what you ask God for is a direct reflection of what you believe about His capacity, His capability, His character, and His name. So what you believe about God, how big you believe He is, determines when you pray whether you think He's capable of answering those prayers. Whether you think He has the capacity to handle your problems that are going on in your life right now. Whether you think that God has in His character to do something about the things that are important to you that you wonder if they're important to Him. And is this in His nature? Is that in your God's nature to even care about what's going on? So how big is your God? Over the next couple of weeks, including today, and we sort of started last week, we are working on a story out of the Bible that we're basing this message series on, and we call it Sun Stand Still. And what our goal is over the next several weeks is only two parts to it. One is to inspire you to be proactive and ask God for the impossible. Now, I want you to be, when I say that, when my goal is to be proactive, many of us in this world are reactive with our prayers. Things happen to us, and we react and we pray. What I'm working to is to help you see and consider the possibility of being proactive and praying beforehand, before these things happen, and pray for God for possibly the things that are impossible in your mind right now. But depending on how big your God is, are possible for that God. The second part is I want to reconnect you to your God-sized purpose and your God-sized potential. Now, when I say your God-sized purpose and your God-sized potential, what I'm talking about is a God-defined purpose and potential. Many of us have put our own spin, if you will, on what our purpose is and what our potential is. Or we might let a coach or a parent or a friend or the world tell us what our purpose and potential is. But what I'm wanting to do over the next several weeks is help you and myself grow into understanding or reconnecting with a God-sized purpose and potential that He has for you. Now, so again, it's all based off of a story from the Bible. And we call this series Sun Stand Still. Now, in this story in the Bible, it comes at a time after the Jewish nations have left Egypt. And Moses has guided them through the wilderness, and they've come to the Promised Land, and they're going into the Promised Land. But through a series of events, Moses has now died. And they've left the responsibility of this entire nation to this young man, or he's an old man at this time, named Joshua. Joshua was Moses' aide for a long period of time. And so Joshua prayed a prayer that was remarkable. He had a vision from God about what he was supposed to do, and he was in the midst of doing that. And in the midst of doing that, it involved taking over this territory that God wanted the Israelite nation to have. And in the process of taking over this territory, his warriors were battling and fighting, and they were winning and doing what God said, but the sun began to set. And Joshua realized that if the sun sets on this battle, that these people who they're fighting, who are now fleeing, will run off and disappear. Now, we know this is true in this area where these battles were going on, because it was near where we had Desert Storm at. And if you remember, in Desert Storm, we came in there and we did a lot of things, but some of the enemy slipped away. You remember? And we didn't get them all at the first time. And then before you know it, they had went into the caves and everything else, and it took years to find them. Now, Joshua knew this would be what would happen. So he did something crazy. He prayed for something that had never been seen. He believed in an impossible thing, and he prayed to God for the sun to stand still. Listen to his prayer. It says, on the day that the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, and I love that so much. Joshua said in front of his peers, in front of his subordinates, he ends up praying this prayer of audacity to ask God. But see, his God was that big, and he didn't care who heard. He didn't care who was around, because his focus was on God. And in the presence of Israel, he said, O sun, stand still over Gibeon, O moon, over the valley of Ajalon. And so, the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as is written in the book of Jasar. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky, and delayed going down about a full day. Now, many of you in this room checked out when I said that. Many of you who have the Santa Claus God, or who has a God that is maybe like Dumbledore. I don't know what he looks like in your mind, and Harry Potter type thing. I'm not sure, but that God that you have, he or she, maybe your God can't do that. But Joshua's God could. And it just happens to be the God that I worship. And it just happens to be the God of what I believe, and what Christians believe, is God's only Son, God in human form, God inside of a human form called Jesus, who for Christians we claim to be our Lord and our Savior, and we base eternity off of our faith in that. Now, I don't know how big your God is, but that's the God that Joshua had. Even before he knew Jesus, he knew God and believed in him that much. And that belief in his God, of how big he was, caused him to pray and ask for something that had never been seen to that point in history, for the sun to stand still. And it did. Now again, you may not have a God that's that big, but I do. And you may say, well, my God is that big, but I don't know if I have the faith to believe all of that. But see, I have enough faith to believe, for me, in a virgin birth. I have enough faith to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. I have enough faith to believe that many of the things that are said in the Scriptures are accurate. And I take that on faith. So I take this on faith like I take Adam and Eve, like I take Jesus' birth to a virgin. I take it on faith. So I believe the sun stands still, or stood still. See, Joshua believed, or was believing God for the impossible. He had the audacity to believe God for things that he had never seen or no one had seen. Now, Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews, writes years and years, thousands of years later, he says, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. See, even you have faith. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to offend some people here today. And I'm just going to say it. And I don't know how involved God was in it. I'm just going to say it. Georgia fans had faith yesterday they would come back. And they did. Then on the other side, these people that wear these funny orange clothes, I don't know why they would wear orange clothes, but they had faith that something would come up different. Now, I don't know about you, but just that game in itself, that's one of the most historical things I've ever seen in my life, and I'm not choosing sides on that. But I'm just saying, the emotional swing of the cameras picking the people out of the crowd going, did that just happen? And then the other crowd, you understand what I'm saying? But it's like, nobody believed that. Has that ever happened? That never happened to us. It's never happened to them. See, accomplishing the impossible is all about seeing the invisible. Accomplishing the impossible is about seeing the invisible. And let me just say this to many of you in this room here. And I'm speaking to myself when I communicate with you or preach. So I'm preaching to the choir, to myself. Many of us have things going on in our life that are so huge, we feel like they're impossible to solve. Some of us is finances. For some of us, we have a financial burden on us, and we feel like that is just so impossible, and would God even care? Most of this is my fault of how I've squandered, or how I've not disciplined myself, or how I've gotten this. Why would God care? And so we don't necessarily ask up that prayer, lift up a prayer of that impossibility. Some of us have sicknesses or experience sicknesses in others' loved lives, in others' loved ones' life. And we pray, but we're really not sure that God can do these things that are written about in the historical or in the Bible that we read. So we don't necessarily pray passionately about it. Many of us are in relationships with people that are struggling and have difficulties, and we just don't think God can fix this relationship. He just can't fix this relationship with me and my child. He can't fix this relationship with me and my dad. He can't fix this relationship between my brother and my sister. He can't fix this relationship between me and my boyfriend. You don't know how complicated it is, preacher. You don't understand my world. We're not married. I have a child. I'm trying to make it. You don't understand this world. You don't understand how hard it is to pray because I feel like I've done something wrong. You don't know how it is to be living with somebody, and yet you feel that God wants to use you, and you're not sure you're usable. And so you don't pray that impossible prayer. And I'm not sure that you're there or not. But today, if you'll just follow me a little bit longer, I want you to just have a little bit of faith. To listen to me a little bit longer so I can help you with that. To just bear with me just a few more moments to help you start to form maybe a prayer that God has been longing for you to pray to Him for years. So we're talking about a son stand still prayer. A prayer that believes that God can accomplish the impossible, but it's got to begin with seeing the invisible. So maybe you've never seen this happen in your life before. Maybe you've never seen it happen in someone else's life. I just want you to hang with me a few moments. Because just because you haven't seen it happen before doesn't mean it can't happen. Leastwise when you follow my God, the one that I serve. Because I've seen Him pick us up out. I've seen Him pick people up out of the gutters and transform them into presidents. I've seen Him take people that are ordinary, average people, and they write books about them and all they did, and all they do, and all they're doing. I actually seen something this morning I never thought I'd see in my life. First service, young lady's here. I know her. I'm going to shake hands with her. Hey, good to see you again. Guess what? What? Little sixth grader. Guess what? What? I got something to tell you. What? What? Guess who the world champion bench press holder is for my age group for females? Well, I don't know. Who? You're looking at her. Yeah. World champion bench press person for her age group. As a sixth grader were here this morning at first service. See what you missed for sleeping in? I never thought I'd see a world champion of anything in person, shake their hand. I got a selfie with them. Hey, I'm telling you I do. Anyway, so here's the thing about sun stand still prayers. Sun stand still prayers, you have to beware of the imposters, the posers. So here's your first fill in the blank, and if you've got those, that was your first fill in the blank. You've got to believe God for the impossible. I think or the believing God for, not imposters, impossibles. I can't read my writing. That's terrible to get that age, you know. But here's your next one. Spot the knot. Spot the knot. Now, how many of you, we were talking about it over here, Shayla and Melissa and I were talking about some things that we watch on TV. How many of you ever watched the History Channel? Okay, you've seen that. How many of you ever watch A&E Channel or PBS? See, those hands didn't go up on that one there. Yeah, okay. Let me call out a couple things. How many of you ever seen American Pickers or Pawn Stars? Now, I'm saying P-A-W-N stars, okay, Pawn Stars. Or Storage Wars. Anybody seen Storage Wars? Or the Antique Roadshow. Now, in each and every one of these, the show is based off of people making money off of valuable things that other people don't recognize as valuable. You with me? So the questions become is this really Babe Ruth's signature on that ball? Is that really an 18th century English-made muzzle-loading pistol? Is that really a red flyer, an original red flyer wagon which was made in the 1900s? Is that really the original Secret Service pen that came from the time period when Abraham Lincoln was killed? So they have these things that come in, especially on Pawn Stars. You know, what's that guy's name, the bald-headed guy, not Chumley, the other guy? Rick, is that Rick? Rick's like, you can't pull anything over Rick because, you know why? Because when you bring that stuff in, what's he going to do? If he doesn't know if it's real or not, what does he do? He calls an expert, doesn't he? He calls an expert in because he doesn't know. So he wants to know, is this the real deal? And that expert comes in, and when that expert comes in, he looks at it or she looks at it and determines whether it's real. And when they know whether it's the real thing, they determine the value of it. Is that not how it works? Same thing on Storage Wars. They find something, and Barry has found so much crazy stuff, and he takes it out and goes, you understand what I'm saying? And they find that. First of all, how do they know so many experts? I mean, that's some weird stuff they be pulling out of them storage lockers, and they be knowing an expert. I just happen to know an expert right down there. I mean, I'm telling you, California must be crazy out there or something. I don't know where they are anyway. You see, the reason that they know why, or the reason they know that they can trust that person to determine the value of that unique item is because that person knows what the real thing looks like. They know what the real thing looks like. And that's the same that's true with banks. Do you understand that there's more counterfeit $20 bills in the world today than any other currency? More counterfeits in that currency for $20 bills. So how would you train all the bank tellers in all the banks across the United States how to know all these different types of counterfeit $20 bills? Well, they don't. They don't train them to know what the counterfeit looks like. They train them to know what the real $20 bill looks like. And when you know what the real deal is, you know the imposter when you see it. You'll know the poser. See, to recognize an imposter, you've got to know what the real thing looks like. That's your next fill in the blank. What the real thing looks like. And the same is true for a sun stand still prayer. The imposter's prayers look like a sun stand still prayer, but they are far from the valuable prayer that believes for the impossible. See, sun stand still prayers versus ordinary prayers require something called audacious faith. Audacious faith is having the boldness, the guts, the intestinal fortitude to be daring enough to ask God for the impossible. To ask God for the things that only God can do. And some of those things in your life and in my life fall in that category. See, an ordinary prayer is based on ordinary faith. It's just getting by faith. But a sun stand still prayer is based off audacious faith. It's supercharged. Not because of the words, but because of the faith behind the words, the faith behind what the person believes. Now, sun stand still's prayer is no magic formula. There's just not a magic formula for it. And again, I come back to this. I'm just feeling this right now. I'm just going to say it. If you're here now today, don't check out on me because you think that thing that's going on in your life is too big for God. I don't care where it is. I don't care who you are. I don't care what it is. I don't know what it is. I can't even put into words what I'm thinking right now or what I'm sensing. But don't check out on me now. You have spent the time and the energy to come here today. God wants to talk to you. And He's not afraid of that impossible situation that you call impossible in your life. He's been waiting on you to get to this point to bring it up to Him and include Him. So, we got to be aware of the imposters. We got to be aware of the imposter sun stand still prayers. And sun stand still prayers, we got to know what the real deal is. The real thing is begin with authentic vision. That's your next fill in the blank. They begin with authentic vision. Now let me back up to where Joshua got his authentic vision. I'm going to read you a part from Joshua chapter 1. Now we read earlier, I think it was around 10, where we read what he did. But here's where the why comes from. And I've said this time and time again, guys and ladies, or all of you. People are going to see what you do, and they're going to see how you do it. But only the few will ever see why you do it or understand why you do it. But you need to understand why you do it. So here is Joshua's why. He did what he did. Joshua 1, verses 1 through 9. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give to them, those Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot as I promised Moses. I just want to pause there. What is he going to give them? Every place that what? They set their foot. What will they get? Everywhere that they set their foot. Who's in control of where they set their foot? Who's in control in your life of where you set your feet? Who's in control of your faith? Who's in control of your fear? You think you're not in control. You have control of your next step. Even if that means I'm not moving. I may not retreat. I may not go forward. But I'm not moving. See, the world isn't made up with a bunch of people that retreat. That's not what's killing the world right now. That's why we can't make the changes that we want. It's not that everybody's retreating because they're afraid. Their fear is causing them to stand still and not take their next step into the territory God has already claimed and given them when their foot hits it. I will give you every place where you set your foot as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. Who will be able to stand up against him? No one. For how long? All his life. As I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. I will never leave nor forsake you. God is saying this to him. I will never leave nor forsake you. Sounds like some of the things that Jesus said to his disciples, doesn't it? Might be because that's God in human form saying the same thing again to a different group of people. He says, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law of my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn to it from the left, or turn from it to the left or to the right, that you may be successful wherever you go. That law and those commandments has something to do with your success. You got to pay attention to them. Do not let the book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you'll be careful to do everything written in it. You can't just read it and forget it. You got to think about it, stew on it, you got to soak in it, you got to live in it, you got to practice it, you got to try it, you got to fail, you got to keep going, and all of those things to get it to be a part of who you are. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So there's two parts of this I want you to catch. And this is part of what your thing is here, that's your next fill in the blanks. First one is, you got to have clear vision. For a sun stand still prayer, you got to have a clear vision. Listen to these words that it said in here. You and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River. That's vision. That's what you're doing. That's insight of what you're doing. I'm about to give you this land and give it to them. I will give you every place that you set your foot. That's a vision. He's getting clarity. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. I will be with you. I will never forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people. You're going to lead them. By the way, he says be strong and courageous. Here's you a little extra that you came here today and you didn't know you was going to get extra. This is a whole seminary degree coming up and giving it to you, right? How many times did he say be strong and be courageous? 3 times. 3s are important. How many times did Peter deny Paul? Did Peter deny Jesus? That was a trick question, because I'd have let that roll on, 3 times, Trinity, 3, right? 3. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and very courageous. Be strong and courageous. Why would he command somebody to be strong and courageous 3 times unless the potential is there for you to be weak and for you to be afraid? In fact, he covers that next when he says, do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. If the other ones are a command, is that not a command as well? Be strong and be courageous. That's a command. Well, then is do not be terrified a command, or is it an option? Just something to think about. Do not be discouraged. See, the reason many of us in this room and many of us in the world, especially the Christians, have mercy on us, Lord, don't step into the area that God's called us to, is because we are terrified of what they will say, what they will do, what will happen. And we sit here and we don't move. And people are dying. Our prayers are not being answered because we're standing here like this and he's just waiting. Put your foot down. Do something. Move. Do something. And we're terrified. And then I will say this, that sometimes in that sometimes we get over that terror and we step down. And then you know what happens? We get discouraged because it didn't go like we thought it should go. You understand? Didn't go like we thought it should go. Not like what God said it would do, what we thought it should go. I'm going to tell you, I get discouraged dieting. I don't know about y'all. Girlfriend, let me just tell you. I'm just going to tell you now. I'm like a cycle, man. I try everything. I'll drink Slim Fast, take those pills, whatever it takes, and it just don't work. I'm doing everything. And there's this cycle of courage and encouragement and discourage. You understand? And sometimes my failures, I remember more than I remember my successes. And I freeze. Now you joke about my weight. I could go ahead and tell you it's my physical side. Going to the gym, getting in there and working out and doing that. I could tell you the same thing. The same thing with my finances. Because I've tried it before and didn't do it. And I get discouraged. So don't try it again. I tried it on my relationships, trying to help me and my family, with my wife, with my children, with my friends, with the church and the relationships. And I try, and I get discouraged and I don't do anything. Because that's too big for God to do. It's impossible. Maybe some of those times in your life where you experience this success and failure, success is failure, success and failure, to help you understand, you need to know how bad you want something to overcome it, to do it again. See, some of us talk about what we want. Some of us talk about these impossible things because they're our vision. They're our purpose. They're the things that we're choosing. They're not God's. What is God saying to you that He wants you to do? Now, it's more than just having a clear vision. See, because clear vision, the way you get clear vision is with consistency and quality. And I would say daily time with God. Here at our church, we call that PTWG, personal time with God. Tell me what that is. Personal time with God. Again, personal time with God. See, many of you, including myself, are afraid to be alone with God. I'm not talking about with devotionals. I'm talking about just with His Word. There was no devotional, no Beth Moore, no Andy Stanley, no anyone else that spoke to Joshua. It was him and the law. It was him and the commandments. That was it. By the way, at that time, there wasn't even much of the Old Testament. It was just basically, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. By the way, Jesus said that later on. I'd say that's pretty good, sums up everything. No need for me to say what's the most important. That's pretty good. Jesus says that's good. By the way, it's written down in the Old Testament. Why don't you just do it? Clear vision comes from consistent quality, and I would say daily time with God. You don't have a clear vision, you may want to check and see how much time you're spending with God. How big's your God again? How big's your God? What are you believing for? Or her? So Joshua, it continues. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your supplies ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here and go and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. I remember one time we preached a sermon right in this room right here, and I wanted to get people's attention. Joel was sitting over here, and I come over there and said, Joshua didn't go over there and was timid like, hey guys, would you like to get ready? I know God's made me the leader. I know y'all love Moses. If you could you get up tomorrow about 6 o'clock in the morning? We're going to go over and take this land. I don't want to upset you, but try to be there. If you roll in late, okay. And I remember when I did that, it was a year ago or maybe, I went over and I just wanted to make a different impact, and I just went over and I snatched one of these college young men up, and I said, that ain't the way he did, because Joshua had seen every one of his family die. Everybody didn't have the courage to step foot in that land the first time. I said, that ain't the way Joshua did it. Joshua went in there and he snatched him up, and I snatched that fella up. You get your tail here, and you be here at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I don't want no excuses. Tonight you bring your swords, and don't you come late. And that boy was just shaking, just like See, he had a clear vision, but he knew he was going to be obedient. So he told them, he says, you've got to do this. Get up and be ready. See, here's the thing. He tells him, be strong, be courageous. Be strong and be very courageous. Be strong and be courageous. Don't be terrified. Don't be discouraged. Let me tell you something. Being courageous is a choice. If you got a pen, you better write that down. Being courageous is a choice that you make. See, you can be strong and lack courage, and your strength means nothing. See, I think that what God is saying to Joshua is not be strong, lift weights, learn how to handle a sword and do all that so you can fight this. I'm thinking God's saying you got to be strong enough to trust me. It worked with David and Goliath, didn't it? By the way, it worked with David and Goliath, didn't it? Y'all believe that? You got enough faith to believe that little fella took out that big guy? You think it was about all of his equipment that he had? Or but he had the faith to go down in that valley to begin with? He had faith enough to go down there. Clear vision plus obedience leads to a sun stand still prayer. So here are 4 things that I want to let you know that are things you need to check your vision for to see if it's a sun stand still vision leading to your obedience that leads to your sun stand still prayer. Number 1, it needs to be biblically based. It needs to be biblically based. Paula Deen, Oprah, and all these people that are great people in the world, that ain't the one you need to base it off of, I'm telling you. Dr. Oz, nope, not him, nobody. I don't care who your people you're looking up to. It needs to be biblically based. Let me tell you what else. After it's biblically based, it will be affirmed by key people in your life. It will be affirmed in you by others. It will always be focused on Jesus. It'll always be focused on what God is calling Jesus to do through you and what Jesus is doing in this world. And the last thing is, it will connect your passions and your gifts and your life experiences. See, all of us have gifts. All of us have passions. All of us have life experiences. But this vision that is biblical, affirmed by other people, that is around us, focused on Jesus, will be connected by those things of your passion, your gifts, and your experiences. So that leads me to this conclusion. Beware of the sun stand still imposters. The third thing you have to do is you boldly have to pursue God's vision with your prayer. See, you got to understand that there's some things that only God can do. And you got to let Him do that. By doing those things, God gets the glory. See, an imposter, here's another imposter. An imposter's prayer will say, it may be hard, but with God's help, I can do this. No, that means you're going to do it and God's not going to get any glory because you're going to take it all. Some people have prayed this because they believe that God can do the impossible, but they put this caveat in there. Listen to this. They pray their sun stand still prayer and they go, if it be your will. Now, if you've ever prayed that, don't freak out. I'm not stepping on your toes. But many of us that pray that on a sun stand still pray for the impossible, if it be your will, we're trying to give God an out in case He doesn't. God doesn't need an out for your sun stand still prayer. And the reason He doesn't is because He's the one that gave you the vision. When you're spending time consistently with God and He gives you that vision of what it is, He doesn't need an out. It is His will. By the way, when Jesus prayed and taught His disciples to pray, it's called the Lord's Prayer. It says, your will be done. There is no if. Is there? Any translation you read, NIV, King James, I don't care what translation you read, it says, your will be done. There is no if. God doesn't need an out. He's calling you to step up and pray this prayer. He's trying to give you a clear vision. What you think is impossible, God goes, that's exactly where I need you at. That's exactly where I need you to understand what I can do through you. If it wasn't God's will, He wouldn't have gave you the vision. Listen, there's some of you right now, you're like me when somebody would say this to me. I knew it was inside of here. It was just hanging up right there. It was this battle that nobody knows. See, I think there's layers of humanness. And there's some things that people see on the outside, and then there's some things that go so deep inside of us, we don't even talk to anybody because that's just so impossible. So many of the fears of who we are and what we think and the self-doubts that we have about who we are and can God use me, and how many times have I lied to God before, and how many times have I been the poser, and it's so core inside of us that we can only go so far. But see, God knows where that begins with in you. Because He knows you better than you know you. See, this morning when I was speaking, I had this mental image of a volcano. See, all you see is the hot, molten lava come out of the top. You understand? You just see it going all over everybody, and your mouth and your anger and your frustration and your doubt and your fears coming out of it. As that lava comes up, and you don't even know where it's coming from. And God knows its beginning point. He's trying to take you there to say, believe me, I can change that. Years ago, we were sent here. I felt like it was to change this city. It was to connect what could not be connected. It was to take people who were near God, far away from God at different stages, and help some way through God's power to pull out of them this strength and this courage and this audacity to say, this town could be different. This place could be a place where people come for recovery, for healing, to recharge, to re-energize, and go out and take back territory that we step in every day. Not for our glory, but for God's glory. And I got discouraged. And I got terrified. You know, a lot of empty seats will get you discouraged if you're a pastor. Shouldn't, but it does. A lot of people coming in your life and then they leave. It hurts. But you don't have to have a pastor. Be a pastor to know how that feels, do you? So discouragement took over my personal time with God suffered because it's just like, you can't handle this. Now I'm at the point I can't make it without Him. Can you? He wants that impossible dream of yours. He wants that impossible vision that He's been laying on you for a while about you. It ain't about anybody. It's about you. And He wants it. So maybe today you still have those connection cards. On the back I put 4 things on there. Maybe you might take that first step, and maybe for you this week your first step is I'll read Joshua 1. Maybe I'll read that. I'll read that. Maybe for you'll really seek to pray this week about what's that vision that God wants for you in your life. What do you want me to do to start forming your Sun Stand Still prayer? Maybe it'll be that part where you own up to saying, you know, God, I've been a poser. I've been disobeying you. Maybe I know what you wanted, but I'm sorry for disobeying you. I don't know what that is. You can check any of those. You can check any. None. It's your call. But I'm going to give you just a moment because we're about to move into a time where we believe in the unseen. So just take a few moments. They're just going to play a little bit of music here, and you're going to just write down or process what you've heard and consider what you would put on that card. Maybe it's you want us to contact you this week. And again, what you put on there, we got a team of people that's going to be praying for this. Because you're the answer to their Sun Stand Still prayer. Because they're like, how can I help, Pastor? Because I got a group of people that's coming up. They're going to have cards. They're going to write their name on it. They're going to put this down. You can pray for them this week. I got you covered, Pastor. I've been waiting on it. I'm ready. So take a few minutes and write those down as we prepare for communion.